Hey, what's up, guys? It's Prison Mike here. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year to everybody. And I've been pretty busy with traveling and some other stuff, so I haven't had a chance to get some videos out here like I would normally want to. So I apologize for that. But trying to get a video out here now. Wanted to briefly just talk about something that has been coming up increasingly more frequently, and that I just think is so important to avoid making this really costly mistake, especially repeatedly. I've seen this in some of the older nations a bit. And then in our nation, even I'm noticing some of this, and especially when I just kind of took a peek in some of the newer nations and how things are going, I'm noticing because of the way Camel's putting all these things out to buy, I think people are getting maybe mixed up with what the priority should be, and I see just so much money going to waste. And on the one hand, from a competitive side of things, that's good for me because I'm spending a finite amount and putting it into things that certainly give significant advantages relative to these things people are wasting money on, honestly. And it's giving me a chance to stay competitive for spending a lot less. But I do think it's worth mentioning to people so that hopefully if people are listening and want to really invest the right way in spending money in this game, I'm here to try to help at the very least avoid really costly mistakes with this. And as always, I'm not offering like financial advice of any kind and not telling people to spend or not spend. Whatever you do with your money is your own. I'm just going to give you a perspective from somebody who is trying to build the strongest city possible for as cheap as possible. So the real priority, as I've said in many other videos, just briefly before I go into what to really avoid, is that, so if you look at, which this move recently, if you look at this here, where are you at when you look compared to the rest of your nation for your officers? That's really important. Where are you at relative to the rest of your nation with your Titans and your plane? And so those are the main things that give you huge permanent stat boosts and benefits in fighting. And then your actual city equipment obviously does as well, and there's some other things, but these are the main things to focus on. But within those things, there are some things to focus on more than others and some things to avoid. And I think the simplest rule that I've realized is anything that makes your city look pretty or look different or changes the appearance of something, like the officers, the skins, the plane, the skins, the guard, all these different things, these are really big generators of money for Camel, clearly, but they really should only be used or purchased by people who have like no budget or whales. And so there's some things that you should definitely be avoiding, and I'm basically showing you right now, like these types of things that cost hundreds and hundreds to thousands and thousands of dollars to either gain access to, even for a small boost, and or require thousands and thousands of dollars of spending in this or to get these things from events, and they give only at best a couple thousand increase in your fleet size, for instance, and a couple percent boost, or even nothing meaningful at all with just looking cool and giving a small wounded unit bonus for your hospital. I mean, these things that people are going nuts on, and these events keep coming up, and that's why I'm reminded, like, yeah, I see people like, you have to spend so much money in this event and then also in like the brutal drag racing, and the rewards you're getting are just not that good. I mean, if you're a whale and you're buying everything else anyways, then by all means go for it. But for like the newer players in newer nations who are probably trying to figure out what to buy and what not to buy, I can just tell you that things that change the appearance, unless you really like the way it looks so much that you want to get it, despite the fact that it's minimally beneficial, that's obviously totally up to you. But I mean, you can look at my city and see what I clearly think, in my opinion, is relevant, because I don't have any of these decorations that other people have, right? And again, we have one or two people who spend a lot of money in our nation, and that makes more sense for them to get things like these decorations and go all out to get the extra couple thousand fleet size and stuff like that. But generally speaking, it's just not worth the money. Those thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars can be way better spent on other things and even in other events. So avoiding things like this, although this does I think, you know, eventually when you get this increased damage to enemy melee, which is really important, but just all these things that you have to spend money on, I mean, I would probably be waiting until these got a lot cheaper. There's obviously going to be increasingly more upgrades, and some of them you can see give better, you know, advantages than others. Like there's a small amount of damage here, but you can get this much cheaper and much easier in other ways. So these things, again, with that are decorations, these guard towers, these permanent fleet things are not going to be worth it. I would strongly encourage people not to waste any of their money on these things if they're not pushing, you know, 20 million officer BP, C-41 whale. You should be putting that money, investing into your officers' meaningful things, and not their skins, but putting it into their 6-star skills, putting it into their equipment, putting it into the plane equipment, putting it into pretty much everything for the Titans. All those things are so much more important. So just avoiding this whole page of things is a good idea for starters. And then just this, not to knock our nation by any means, and it's great that they're putting in effort and money, certainly, but unless, again, to spend this kind of money on this event here, you just, it pains me to see people throw away the amount they're throwing away on these things. Yeah, so if I were to make like a scale of 0 to 10 for these different things you can get to purchase, and if 10 was the best, so like the most beneficial thing that you can buy, the thing that's going to give you the best bang for your buck, most benefits, you'd be looking at something like the monthly uranium card, for instance, because uranium is really important to level up to C-41 and get all the valuable things that unlock at those higher levels. And not only is uranium important, but then the uranium card is by far the cheapest way to get uranium relative to all the other spending options. So that would be like uranium card 10 out of 10. And if on the other end of the spectrum, a 0 out of 10 was something like probably like the worst thing you could buy, the most useless thing. So literally this type of stuff, buying like spending actual money, wasting actual money to get oil from the resources, or like steel or something that's like super readily available. That'd be like a 0 out of 10 for the value. So it feels weird using the word value when you're referring to things you buy in an app game, but regardless, so 0 to 10, 0 being the worst, 10 being the best things you can buy. I would honestly say that the plain skin is like a 0.5 out of 10 in my opinion, like just above wasting money on resources, because unless you are a whale who has already maxed every single other thing you possibly can on the planes, and everything else is maxed all the way, or you are very well on your way to that, it would not make sense or be cost efficient to spend money on that. It's the worst thing. All this stuff is so much better for increasing damage here to melee, increasing damage to long range, HP. There's so many things, and now with some of these new things that you'll see here, these new skills with the equipment, there is certainly more damage being done by the planes, and so higher damage and higher attack is beneficial, but that's the end game last thing you need to be focusing on for the plane. The priority for most people is going to be to just keep it alive, make it more survivable, and really work on the actual stat skills and things that it can do to benefit your actual city for the long term. With all of this type of stuff and all this type of stuff, the very last thing you should be thinking about is this, because if you look, a lot of these levels for the skin don't give you anything at all, or they just change appearance. They literally just make it look different and giving you nothing else. And then when you look at the 4 different levels that actually give you some sort of stat boost, outside of just activating it, you get tactile missile damage boost, and then warplane general attack, and an ultra laser damage boost, and then warplane HP. This is the only one, the HP, that makes you a lot more survivable and would be beneficial in my opinion, but the amount you have to spend, the crazy thousands and thousands you'd have to spend to get there, is ludicrous and not at all worthwhile for anyone who doesn't already have like essentially a completely maxed plane. And then the other thing with this is just this tactical missile and the ultra pulse. So these are the things that are specific to the plane's damage output skills, and for this one, even the ultra pulse, it's not even available unless you have a gold plane. So it's like here, I don't even have that active, so why would you ever buy that if you don't even have the base skill active, right? And it's so expensive. These first skills, as I've talked about in the past, that are in this epic gold tier are just making your plane do more damage, and I have a very low motivation to waste so much money to just get those things. It's not until you get to here where you get more survivability and then some of these things that are really more beneficial, particularly that at the very end, but that are beneficial, and the cost for that is so expensive. It's just really not worth it for me, in my opinion. Unfortunately, that my opinion has changed more recently because of the equipment skills that you can get and that are available as you have to level up into these like higher tiers. So you have to get up into the epic and the epic tier, and then you also have to, unfortunately, move into the immortal tier 5 to get the last group of those skills. And I've talked about that in the playing video. So yeah, it's just not really worth the take home for the skin is it is the very last thing you should ever consider spending any money on for the plane after you've maxed everything else, because everything else is more beneficial than just some of these like little boosts of damage to these specific attacks for the plane. Everything else is more beneficial. So I would focus on the other things the plane has to offer from this page and from this page in particular, and those are really where it's at, and they get pretty expensive also as you level stuff up. As you can see, for like the equipment, you know, I'm needing 700, only 300 there, it's 500, so it really starts to get expensive and take time. It's a long grind, but that is going to be much more worthwhile for getting these base stats to increase, but then also what it activates within these equipment skills for things like this. There's just so many actually good things here that it's far more beneficial to spend on that. I would not waste your money. That skin again is 0.5 out of 10. That's how I'm ranking that. So other things that I talked about just to, I guess, rank them, I suppose. I think if you're looking at like these new guardians or guards, so I actually just today now unlocked the sky silhouette, and that gives you the 4% increase in the attack, right? And then you have to keep leveling that up to increase the phases so that you can then start using the dazzling stuff to get some like increased wounded bonus or increase in fleet of only 2,000 or 3,000 if you want to spend a bunch of money to get these things from the brutal drag racing. So it's like you spend to then unlock things that you have to spend even more on, and it's just a vicious cycle, all for just a few percent attack. That being said, the way I just did this was, if you do spend on the daily quest thing, so this, where is it here? This advanced rewards was like $5, and you get all this stuff then that unlocks from this list, and then it also lets you double up on the daily quest thing to get the second drop of these little marbles, and so that's $5. So if you do that, you know, $5, and then you can get, excuse me, here it's another $5 for 45 more of them, and just doing those two things alone will give you enough to reach this 8,000, which gives you 3 of these actual like sky silhouette fragments, and so that's $10 to get 3 of them. So to get 21 of them to actually unlock this would cost you $70 over a couple months of this event resurfacing itself or resetting and being available. And so that's how I did it. It cost like $70. That's fine. Actually, the first time I only spent $5. I didn't actually buy any of these at all because I wanted to see kind of how things would work out. But after that, I spent $5 on this too each time. So it's $10. $70 is fine for 4% attack. So that's like a 5 out of 10 if you do it that way. But people who were rushing and spending a lot of money on this were spending at least 4 times. Like it was $250 at the very cheapest to like probably closer to $500. So people were spending 4 times as much as I did just to get that 4%, and then you got to keep on grinding it up. So I'm not doing anything more than $10 in this at a time, and I'll slowly grind it up, and I'm not wasting any more money than that. Any more spent on that would be like pushing down to like a 2 out of 10 in my opinion of how to spend your money on this game. So it also sucks that the exchange store is absolute garbage. Like the amount of these stupid things you have to, these stars you have to get anything meaningful is ludicrous. So I can't even with the $10 spend, I never even have enough to be able to afford 1,000 officer XP. It's so stupid. So I'm just not motivated at all to get those, and I'm treating them both the same. So for the Star Master and this guy Silhouette, I'm doing the same thing. The first time I only bought one, and then since then I'm basically buying, like, spending $10 to get the 3 of them for this one as well to unlock that, and that's how I'm going to do it. I'm not going to spend any more than that as far as like permanent fleets go. So I think this Lion, I already mentioned this in the prior video, how useless I think that is for the cost and how much more important it is to use your officers to expand your fleet. And I stand by that. The amount you have to spend to level this up. This is, again, just like the other island items. Camel is very smart about rebranding things that they're not making as much money on. So they've just come up with new island items that now look fancy in your fleet if you don't have it on light mode, and or look fancy on your city, to try and trick people into wasting money on them, in my opinion. Because they're just almost useless for the amount they cost. And so really caution you guys about this type of stuff. You should be glad, though, and I'm very glad that the Camo is dropping this type of stuff, because it's really expensive and really almost useless. And so the only people that should be buying it, and a lot of people that are buying it, are the whales, and they need to spend and are spending, and it helps keep Camo happy, but it doesn't really give them a whole lot. And so it gives people like me a chance to slowly grind my way a little bit closer to people who are stronger than me and have already bought all the other good stuff and are just kind of wasting time on this. So it's good, in my opinion, that Campbell does this. That's one of the ways that hopefully the gap between people who spend a lot and people who don't spend as much could narrow a little bit and make things more competitive, is if they keep dropping stupid things like this that cost a ton and don't give much of a benefit, but don't fall into the trap of then wasting a big chunk of the money you're willing to spend on these type of essentially useless things. On that note, though, the one thing that actually I do think is worth mentioning is this rock band here guy. So he's a little bit different in that I wish I would have taken a screenshot of the cost of his little, dog fragments here, how much they cost when they put in the shop and the specials, to see how much it was actually going to cost, and I didn't do that. But with this skill, my initial thought was that meant you had to activate it, and that it was active for a period of time with a cooldown and not permanently active. But I asked Surveyor, one of our 41, so if you watch this, Surveyor, thank you for answering my question, and he has this and said it's active all the time without a cooldown, and so that actually is a bit of a game changer on how I would look at this one personally, where I would be willing to spend to unlock it at least and get this skill for the increasing damage to enemies melee by 3%. I mean, that skill is in the very top tier of the most important stats, if not arguably the most important one that there is in the entire game. So I would be very willing to spend several $100s on that, probably, realistically. But then when you look at the other things that become available as you upgrade it, it's just like HP, attack, things like that. Again, HP, attack, these types of things here, and then attack like way up and spending a ton, and it gives a halo attack to other people around you, I guess, if you're in the same hive. And then these component things, again, there's damage to mid-range, but that's about it. And as far as damage, and then these things just require so much of this, it's going to be very expensive. So I'm honestly not interested in any of that stuff. All that is like 1 out of 10 for priority, but this initial skill, just getting the 100 to unlock this and get that increased damage to melee, that to me actually would be like a 7 out of 10 that I would think is a good enough value to try and get that. And the reason for that, just to give a brief context or perspective, so it's the other stat that, because so many people are long range, reduced damage taken from long range right here, this one is really important. Again, top tier one, very most important one, because all the damage that long range enemies do is reduced by 102.4% for me, for all my troops, Titans playing, taking damage from them, and those are the main attack units for most people. And so this skill actually maxes at 105.5%. So I have it 102.4. So basically I have 3.1% to go to increase this to the max. So it works out actually pretty well, 3.1% versus the 3% for that grease damage to melee. And so if you look at how much that's going to cost me realistically, or how much it's already cost me, so okay, so here I have it maxed at 3S, and it's 15% increase. That's the max. So, but then if you look here, I only have 2S, and it's 13.5. So 1.5% increase would be going from the 2S to the 3S. And remember, to do that, you have to have these unworldly cards, and I've basically had to waste 100 tries on different people to get that, or 1,000, excuse me, 1,000. So to go to 3S you have to have 1,000 of these, which I do. Actually, I only had 906 there, but I have plenty on some of my other officers to shuffle around to do that if I was going to prioritize that right now. But think about how much that would cost, and just failed attempts on these other officers to get the right skills to go up that extra 1.5%. And then the other 1.6% is from 0.8% here, going from 14 to 15, which is going to cost 76 of these essence core, so 76 of them. And the same thing for the drill masters. So here again, another 76. So that's 152 of these equipment essence core that I'll need to go the last 1.6%, 152 of them. And not to mention, I also need to go take this equipment piece up to 20, so I need another, 240 of these alloy as well. And so you can imagine how expensive that 3% is going to cost me to take it to the max level. And so relative to that, I think a couple $100, hopefully at the most, to get that damage to the melee is probably going to be worthwhile for me, and I'm fine with that. I'm just not going to keep pushing it up and spending more after that, because the stats it gives and the benefits at that point are just not worth it. It's not justifiable, and so I think that's as much as I have to say about the things to really avoid, which is a lot of those things that were recently offered. But to help then people with what to do, there are a couple of general rules or guidelines I can try to give you guys, things that are just fundamental concepts you have to understand about the game and purchasing in the game, to then be able to make educated decisions on what to like buy next, or how to buy things really. And so there are two things that I'll talk about here, two concepts that I'll elaborate on and give examples to try to give you guys a good foundation for how to approach this.